All right, hello everybody. Going to go ahead and get started here. I imagine a few more people will trickle in. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Elliot Thornton. I'm a software developer for the Language Conservancy and Lakota Language Consortium. I've worked on a number of products for the Lakota language over the last number of years. And Owóksape is probably the most exciting and one of my favorites that I've worked on. So I'm excited to be here with you today and talk about some new things we're working on with it, and especially the Owóksape Teacher Portal, which is the primary focus of this talk. Let me bring up a couple different things in chat here real quick. All right. And Marion, just to kind of go through the format of the presentation today, I'll kind of go through a presentation and demo, and then during the second half of the presentation, I'll bring everyone into panelists, and we'll be able to share screens and do some hands-on work, getting everyone going with the teacher portal. Owóksape we started working on it back in 2016 and 2017, and so it's been around for that long, and released in I think main release was in about 2018, and now we have several thousand users and over several thousand active users on a regular basis as well. And many of those people have gotten quite far in the curriculum, and I've been excited to kind of see the growth in users and consistency in users throughout. And so I'd also like to thank the funders that have made this project possible, and also thank our talented programming and curriculum team, including Logan Swango, Pete Vieira, Jan Ulrich, and Mark Kubrick, and and especially the amazing work of Ben Blackbear and Iris Eagle Chasing in providing much of the audio we've used for the curriculum. So again, we've kind of got a plan for today. I'll start now with the presentation and then do a live demo of the teacher account setup. We'll then do a demo of the student classroom experience. And then about an hour in, I might go a little quick through this, and we can have more time for Q&A, but around 10 a.m. We'll get some Q&A back as far as any questions people have. And then right after that, we'll do some hands-on training, get everyone in, sharing their screen if possible, or logging in as students, or logging into their teacher accounts, just to check out the new interfaces, see what works for you. And then for the last portion of it, one thing I'm very excited about is getting some feedback, getting more feedback from teachers, see what features you all want to see what you think isn't going to work too well, as we're going to continue active development on this project, and continue working to make it better for all the teachers that are going to be using it. And so let's get started. So I'll start out, I'm sure most of you are pretty familiar with the Owóksape, but I'll just kind of run through some of the features and basic idea of it to get started. So the primary interface that users go to in Owóksape, and there's a mobile version as well, which is very similar, is the learning path, in which basically the units and levels are organized so that your normal user is going to progress through the kind of linear designed curriculum, and go from unit to unit, and the curriculum for Owóksape was pulled largely from the Owóksape audio series, which has a very kind of specific progress to it to introduce vocabulary and grammatical patterns in a reasonable way. And part of the reason that the teacher portal has come about is a number of teachers are teaching in a more communicative way, where these grammatical structures and the way that they're formed together doesn't necessarily perfectly fit the curriculum they're teaching in the class. And so the idea is we're going to open it up so that teachers can kind of arrange things a little better. And I think that'll form in different ways over time. So within Owóksape, the two primary things that a user is exposed to are, lessons and exercises. And lessons can, for the most part in the current curriculum, contain just images and audio, but they can definitely contain video as well, or other interactive features. And lessons are generally meant to introduce concepts and largely through example. So as a user is going through the content, they're going to see various comparisons of phrases showing minor grammatical changes so that they can kind of look at the patterns and pick those up. And then there's also a significant amount of vocabulary and sentence patterns throughout the curriculum. So in exercises, there's 6 main types of exercises, and like I said, I'm sure most of you have used Owóksape at least a little bit and are familiar with the exercise types. But all the curriculum is designed with true or false exercises, match the pairs, multiple choice exercises, fill in the blanks. Which with fill in the blanks, it can it can really be a fairly complex exercise for students to fill in just a few letters or arrange a sentence or, do more complex exercises to start seeing how sentences fit together and, even down to letters for spelling and so on. And then building blocks is kind of an extension of fill in the blank where you can kind of get more complex putting a sentence together and really sort of forming those productive, learning exercises. And then, of course, anagram is another one that's, similar to building blocks in which, they're, just typing out, giving the given letters. And then, the most productive would be to, for a learner to learn how to, completely type in the language and sort of reach a level of literacy and comfort to be able to type things out. So that's sort of the goal in these exercise types and how things have been put together. So a thing we've added in recent updates is the ability to do progress navigation. So within any unit of Owóksape, the user now sees on the left-hand side, well, so this was sort of always there, but now it's an interactive component where as a user gets anything wrong, it shows up in red. And for any particular unit, the user can now go back to the lesson or go back to an exercise they got wrong on demand, or just click through to find the one that they were confused about, or if they need to explain something to you, they can kind of show on their screen, oh, it was this one here, and this is the trouble I'm having. So giving that kind of level of navigation is something we've tried to put there in recent updates. And one thing you'll see in sort of the teacher curriculum management system is that you can set up a test mode in which the ability to kind of do these repeats or go back is more limited, where the user is really kind of getting tested to say, I got to this point and I know this information, so I got it right. And then, of course, there's a few things in the teacher portal that will come up with points and how those are going to work. And that's something that I think we'll have a little bit of discussion at later on, as they are kind of integrated into some of the test scoring items. So throughout Owóksape, users gain points via completing exercises and lessons. And some of those points for exercises are determined by the level of difficulty of the exercise, which is programmed into Owóksape. And then, of course, within, answering anything, there's a lot of review and a lot of feedback where, users can see what the correct response is right away, and learn from their mistakes, hopefully more quickly. And then, of course, one key feature of Owóksape is the review section. So after curriculum is done, any item that a user experiences is entered into a table 4 times. So once for any reading, writing, listening, or speaking or productive exercise. So with each of those, we kind of, well, the Owóksape system keeps track of what users have, gotten incorrect or had trouble with, and those things hopefully rise to the top and are exercised more thoroughly, along with looking at items that users have not done in a while. So I think there's maybe some interesting components of the teacher portal we can think about to integrate review more into it. It hasn't been a primary focus of the teacher portal development at this point, although within the classroom review is accessible. And then of course curriculum is, we've tried to design the curriculum to be relatable and to have some good imagery, although with resources as they are, it hasn't always been possible to make things as interesting as possible. But we are hopeful that we'll have a lot more design in our future curriculum and continue to kind of make interesting looking and interesting experiences for learners. So let's jump into the teacher portal. So the teacher portal was designed after we got some feedback from teachers that they were really hoping to have a little bit more control over the curriculum they were providing to their classrooms. And I think that's a valid point, because the the initial 128 units of Owóksape are a progression in a fairly logical vocabulary and grammatical structure sense, but not necessarily perfect for use in the classroom whenever a teacher has their own curriculum and their own procedure for getting from point A to point B with learners. And I'm going to pause for 1 second to see if I can bring Kim Campbell over as a panelist here, because I think, actually, is it letting me do it? Chris, if you can hear me, could you add Kim as a panelist?
Yeah, I think I'm on now as a panelist. There we go.
Okay, great, Kim. All right, yeah, I'll introduce Kim Campbell as well, who I've done some consulting with her on, the design of the teacher portal, and just wanted to, I saw you popped in, so I wanted to bring you into the discussion as well. But I guess I'll continue on for now, and feel free to chime in, Kim, as you have anything to add. Thanks for coming.
Okay.
Right, so the main features of the teacher portal are to create modes where a teacher can now, think of a unit of Owóksape as a homework assignment, get feedback on how students are doing, not only on the unit as a whole, but on specific words, or as us developers call them, cards. And then also create tests where for a particular unit, especially there's a number of quiz units where they might lend themselves well to, being something where you're counting the points and giving the student a grade based on their score rather than completion. So one thing about all the curriculum in Owóksape is the goal is to gain completion. So if a student gets something wrong, they're given the opportunity to redo that exercise 3 times before they're kind of allowed to proceed on. And with that, we don't want people to, fail too much. So if somebody gets something wrong and it, sort of goes into the wrong answer deck, that student will see that for sure more often in review, and really try and reinforce those things where the student has made a mistake or had trouble with a particular concept or a particular spelling, anything like that. So we've designed it with the ability for teachers to kind of get full access to that student data. And then I think we'll continue to grow that portion of the project. As there's a lot of data that's in the back end of Owóksape, and at this point we've integrated what we thought was important for teachers, and I think you guys will give us some feedback on how much more or what else you're seeking to better assess your students and better make sure that you're giving them the help they need as they make mistakes or are learning. And then additionally, we've had a number of requests from teachers to integrate with Google Classroom and Schoology. So that is something we're continuing to work on. And as I get into the kind of more administrative and student portion of things, I'll explain kind of how that will work and what we're learning about the Google Classroom API to kind of better help, especially all the schools that are primarily doing distance learning, which I think is most of you. How to integrate that into the gradebooks and systems of Google Classroom and Schoology going forward. And I think the timeline on those is going to be a little further off, but you know, we'll continue to have discussions with teachers about that. So starting out with what the student experience is. So the normal Owóksape interface is still available to all accounts created on the teacher portal side of things. But an additional link for Classroom is added to any student that has been added to a classroom in Owóksape. And so the main view that a student sees whenever they come into a classroom is the ability to you know, quickly ask teachers questions. At this point, it just sends an email, but as we integrate more of the village and possibly some other chat functionality, we'll kind of get more classroom messaging going on the Owóksape side. And part of that is just we're holding off on some release of features as we figure out the Google Classroom integration to just make sure everything we're doing is compatible with you know, the other platforms that we'll be working with. And then one primary thing that the student can see at the top of their learning path is a teacher's message, which is kind of easily set and can include links to if you have a Zoom meeting or other specific YouTube videos that you're wanting to present to your students. You can definitely include links to them here and change that on a daily or however often basis to just have a message front and center to your students, you know, or any special instructions you may have for them. And then of course the path in this case is the teacher arranged path. So it's not necessarily in the same order, and we'll talk about a few features we're going to add there and a few things that are there currently for teachers to access as far as arranging the curriculum. And then of course the review section is still available for the classroom path. And then any unit is going to be unit specific review. And so jumping into the back end, which is going to be the primary focus of this training, just to kind of get everyone you know, set up with their accounts, you know, see what level of usability we've reached and how useful this is going to be to you. So starting out, there's a school administration panel. And so the structure of the teacher portal is basically has kind of two tiers to it, the school level and the classroom level. So some schools are going to be larger with quite a few teachers attached, or there may even be some school corporation administrators listening. And so the school administration panels and a few other features allow managing the bulk of students at once, whether you're just adding a small section of them to one class or another. This panel is not available to what are school teacher accounts. So you can sort of restrict access to, you know, adding more students to a classroom to just a particular kind of user. But for those at smaller schools, I would imagine that those users would probably be set up as the admin user. So we'll go through the whole process of how you can add students, how you can invite people to your classrooms, and set up your usership, whether that student already has an Owóksape account or if you're creating new Owóksape accounts for your students. So the process of adding students is fairly simple. So there's an Excel template file, which takes in the student ID and other information needed for the student. And you can also add teachers through this menu, as this is the administrator section. And then you can either add the students to the school or to any particular classroom that's been set up within that school. So the import process brings all of the students that you have in your import sheet into this panel for review, and then clicking submit brings them all in there. Additionally, you can generate a link for students to access a classroom. And the way that works is you can either invite them to the school or just a particular classroom. And then anyone that already has an Owóksape account that has provided this link can then easily log in, and they'll get a message saying, do you want to join this classroom? As soon as they confirm it, they've been brought into the classroom. So we've tried to make bringing students into the classroom because, I think we're not just necessarily going to use, this platform with schools specifically, but also, it may come up for our language weekends or summer institutes or other Lakota learning events we may put on. And then additionally, with the Google Classroom side of things, the ability to administer students through Google Classroom is definitely something that's going to be important to a lot of teachers. So we are working to integrate with the Google Classroom student system to be able to pull Google Classroom users into Owóksape in a really straightforward and easy way. So we've been trying to maintain all of our data so that we're compatible with Google Classroom throughout. And the process with Schoology is a little bit different, but again, we're going to try and kind of maintain that integration so it's easy for students that are easy for teachers and administrators that are using those platforms to use Owóksape along with it. And then, like I said, if you are an administrator handling multiple schools, or if you're a teacher that travels between multiple schools, it's very simple to manage multiple schools through this interface at the same time and sort of keep certain things separate and certain things accessible across all those accounts as a single teacher. So one of the first steps in kind of getting curriculum together to be used in Owóksape is to create a lesson plan for a class. So whereas on the main Owóksape path, we've split that into 4 levels, and we're working on adding additional levels relating to the grammar handbook and vocabulary. The way a classroom in the teacher panel works is to basically have a single level that you have control over to provide curriculum for your class. And so, with this interface, currently you'll have access to all 128 units that are currently existing. And then as we come out with more content, which we're trying to get a few releases together in the, hopefully very near future, but, we're always kind of pushing against a number of deadlines. So we'll see how quickly we get the rest of the curriculum out. But as those units and levels become publicly available, all of those would then pop up on this screen as well. So in creating a lesson plan, all lesson plans are shared across the school with certain locks that can be put in place. And so if you create a new lesson plan, and I think Kim had some really good ideas in our discussions relating to, as you're creating a lesson plan, you might have a single lesson plan for, one level of class and then another for another level of class. And then you may have some specific notes for, you may use this one in the fall and this one is spring if they've got specific differences, or, the description variable here is really just kind of to give you a reminder of what you've put into your lesson plan so you can kind of keep notes on it. And then whenever you create a lesson plan, you have the ability to copy the units from any existing lesson plan. So if you're starting a new class and you just want to make some minor modifications, you can pull last semester's class over into a new lesson plan, then add content to it, or just reuse last semester's lesson plan for the coming semester. And then within the unit selection screen, we do have it split in levels currently. And we're working on a number of search features that are currently not in this release, but we should have them out in the next week or two. Everything's kind of, a lot of the features are very close to completion, or what has reached kind of enough completion and testing to be released is sort of what you'll see in the live version today. But a number of search features that allows you to look by concept or by Lakota or English word or phrase, or a few better browsing views will be available in the near future. Additionally, I've started generating a curriculum guide document, which will kind of give you an example of exercises within any particular unit. So the one you see here is unit 40. And so you'll see that description, pronunciation 7, and then the various aspirated stop phones that the user will experience in that unit, and then a list of vocabulary that they would be learning throughout that unit. And so I think the curriculum guide will be kind of like a nice hard copy version for teachers to browse through to kind of better allow themselves to navigate the curriculum and pick out what's going to make the most sense for their use of Owóksape along with their in-class or online curriculum that they are currently putting together. And then, as with a lot of the interfaces we've put together for the teacher portal, the creation of a lesson plan is a simple drag and drop interface. So you just drag units from one side, add them to your lesson plan, and then they would be available in the classrooms associated with it. So once you've created a lesson plan, any particular classroom, so a lesson plan is kind of designed to be attached to a single classroom. And once that lesson plan is attached to a classroom, due to sort of the way that progress is accumulated and the way that curriculum is managed, that attachment is permanent. So any edits to the lesson plan after it's been attached to a class would affect any class that lesson plan is attached to. So from within the classroom administration menu, you basically have a lot of options for managing the students of your class, and then also specific variables that will affect how the student is experiencing that particular unit in the lesson plan. So whenever you first go to add a classroom, you'll see the new classroom interface is just looking for the name of the classroom, which will be presented to the student, the start date and end date, once a classroom reaches the end date, it's sort of archived from the student. They'll still have access to it and access to kind of go back and review, but it will no longer be kind of prominently visible to them unless they're looking at their archived classrooms. And then, of course, you'll have to have already created a lesson at this point, putting together units to attach to this classroom. So then once a classroom is created, the lesson plan will show up on this right-hand panel, which gives you each unit. And one thing about the lesson plan creation is that within that drag and drop interface, changing the order of things will affect the order in which the student gets them within the classroom. So the options you have in releasing things to your students is some teachers might be teaching in a more self-paced sense, or just want to kind of use Owóksape as supplement where if the student's able to progress faster, they can kind of learn from more units one after another as they're going through. But some teachers may want them as specific homework assignments only to be released after a certain time. So there is a release on option where you can kind of set the date that the particular lesson plan item will become active. Or you can manually set any one to be active or inactive so that the user has limited access or no access to them until it's time for that homework to be assigned. Additionally, there's an
Elliot, can I just jump in here?
Yeah,
you are
for sure.
it's just you have questions, so I'm fielding them in chat.
Thank you. Sure.
But Marion wants to know, are you recording so she can get access to the rest of the training later?
Yes, we are. And I believe the Facebook live stream is also going to be available after as well.
Okay, and then you have questions about from Roger about whether you can add this to Chromebooks and probably iPads or whatever different. Can students get this loaded onto their computers? And that's, to me, that's actually a pretty good question, because would it just be the plain Owóksape, or could you load the teacher lessons?
So I've tested the teacher interface on a browser within an Android tablet, and it worked just fine. As far as the mobile version of Owóksape, I am doing some final touches on the classroom portion of the mobile version of Owóksape, so that students will be able to access the classroom portion from their regular Owóksape mobile app, which will be sent out as an update hopefully in the next few weeks. It's still a little bit of ways in testing and finishing a few features. But as far as the teacher administration panel, that should be available on any tablet through a browser, but we will not be adding it to the mobile app.
Okay, and you've got another question from Marion on chat. Can you export, you're seeing it, or import lesson plans out of it or into Owóksape? They require for Marion Blue Arm to use, they have to use Planbook, and in order not to have to write them twice, could it be pasted? I'm assuming, Marion, you don't mean the whole lesson, but just like the plan, the actual what units are in it. Is there a way to, yeah, exactly. Can you copy paste into like a Word doc or whatever else they're using, make it so that you could save it as something else?
So I've integrated a number of exports in already, and that's one I can pretty simply do. So I'll add that to my list and pop it out in the next update. So that's yeah, that's a good idea, Marion, and I'll definitely add a lesson plan export probably to the classroom screen because I know Kim has suggested a couple other features to that screen as far as renaming units and so on that I haven't quite finished integrating, but we'll have in there. So that'll kind of make the export match up with those renames that you've done
Awesome.
as well. So yeah, that makes total sense, Marion, and thanks. All right. And okay, I think, is that all the questions we have at this point? We can stop for a second if there's any more
Yeah,
questions.
no, that was all. If anybody has any more right now, but I'm just monitoring chat, and I know Marion has to leave for another meeting. So anybody else, now that we're paused, have anything right now?
All right.
Okay. No. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Yeah, sounds good. And thanks, Kim. Okay, yeah. So within the lesson plan view, you can schedule the release, and I think I was just getting to the exam mode. And like I said earlier, within the exam mode, which there's a few features in the classroom portion in this current release, which we're going to try and get another release out in the next week, just because coming up to this webinar, we're doing a lot of testing and had a few things left to do. So we'll be kind of trying to do a few more rapid releases right after this. But the idea in exam mode, and I definitely like to hear some feedback on what use cases teachers would like for the exam mode, is basically the idea that the student is more being tested. So, you know, in normal Owóksape, they're asked to repeat things multiple times, aiming for completion, and really just trying to add, you know, stack up the experiences with the language and with words in the curriculum for the student. Whereas in exam mode, that ability to repeat is taken away, and then a score is produced. And so within Owóksape, the various lesson types, a point value has been kind of assigned, and additional bonus points or additional difficulty points have been added as curriculum has been added. And so those point features for any sort of unit that becomes a test will then become the sort of scoring metric for that test, where you know, one exercise might be worth 2 points, and then the next one 10 points, and so on and so forth, depending on the you know, difficulty. And that might be an area where you know, we may be able to allow teachers to have a little bit more control over that in the future. But for now, the score out of 100 is provided based on those. And then the last part is Okay, yeah. The optional button, which the optional button is really more of an unlocked button. So just as in the normal Owóksape curriculum, the way the teacher or the way that you would set up the curriculum would be to have kind of everything in an order, and the student is not allowed to progress to the next unit unless they've either completed that unit and a certain amount of review of that unit, or you've switched it to optional, which that does not affect the scoring or the way scoring is necessarily recorded. And it could be a way for teachers to specifically assign bonus exercises that could be skipped by most students. But I think there's a few use cases for the optional. And then Marion asks, like, you can select if you want to grade the exam or not. So I would say you can select whether you want. So upon exporting the data later, I think you can choose to add it to your grade book or not, or adjust the grades based on kind of what you know about that unit. But as we'll see in kind of the teacher dashboard section where scores and progress are exported, the point values will be kind of brought into that sheet. Thanks, Kim. Sorry.
Courtney Yellowfat has a question too. So while you're interrupted again,
yeah, sure.
Is there a way to use Owóksape Live? It's right underneath Marianne's, with students actively participating via Zoom, Microsoft Teams, or Google. I think that's the piece you haven't quite got done yet, but can you speak to that?
I think we'll see in the dashboard section that as a student progresses through a unit, they're going to experience certain cards and exercises, and so that progress will is sort of shown in a feed that can be updated live or refreshed. And the live version of it, I did a little bit of more testing with limited bandwidth, and I'm going to do a little more optimization before we kind of have that fully out there. But that'll we'll get to that in the next couple screens. And then as far as sharing it over Zoom, as long as you allow your students to share their screens, you would definitely be able to kind of watch their progress in that way, sharing over Zoom. If you have any other ideas on how to integrate it into how you're doing remote learning now, I'd love to hear kind of more ideas on that. And I think when we get to kind of the classroom demo portion, maybe some ideas will come out. And then of course, so as administrators are all able to add students and kind of have control over rosters, teachers are able to look at the students that exist within their school's roster and easily add them to a classroom. So let's say you have a student that switches from one teacher's class to another. It wouldn't be any trouble to remove them from one class and drop them over to another using this interface. And then again, and then also, as you've set your roster, be able to, export a list of users to, be able to have a paper copy of that or import it into whatever other teaching or grading programs you're using, if that's something that makes sense to do. And then, right. And then I think we already covered a new classroom screen, but so yeah, so in the new classroom screen, like I said, you have a start date and end date, and then select your lesson. All right, so getting to the teacher dashboard. So within the teacher dashboard, you have the ability to set your classroom message at the top. So whenever we go into our live accounts, if you haven't created any classes or lesson plans at this point, you'll see that it looks a little different. So once you have your student roster built out and classrooms and lessons, this is more the view you'll end up with. And so within the, so like as I already said, the classroom message is there to provide links and important notices. Additionally, so the student progress overview shows you a view of all the units you've dropped into the curriculum for that class. And for simplicity's sake, and just to kind of be able to do a quick overview of how your students are progressing, any completed unit is shown in green, and any incomplete or in progress unit is shown in orange. And then also test scores would kind of be reflected in that same way. But I think we're going to change that interface up a little bit. And so you're able to mouse over any particular dot to see exactly the percentage completed, and sort of track all your students' progress in, as they're completing it in class or at home or through remote learning or however you're using it. Additionally, the overall progress is simply exported using the export button to Excel format, and would have your student roster there. We had a recent request to add first name, last name, and student ID to the student import settings, and that'll be integrated into this export as well shortly. And so again, you'll kind of see the progress of the units and be able to hopefully import that into whatever grading program you're using with your students. And then, there was, is that another question, Kim?
You have a couple, comment from Marion that a lot of people, because of the Zoom security issues, a lot of people are doing Google Meet or Hangouts instead.
Okay.
So that maybe you may need to think of several classroom platforms, because indeed Zoom bombing is an issue for us too.
Sure. And I
then,
think all of those have the ability to share screens. So I think as long as your students have the ability to share their screen, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to kind of overlook their progress. But as students are going through exercises, the ability to look at that from this interface is not dependent on anything else like that. So if your students, working on their cell phone or any other device, or not even in class at the time, that progress will show up on these screens.
And then you had a question from Philomene about availability on hard copy, and I'm assuming she meant the Owóksape, like can you print a worksheet or something? Is there a worksheet print, which is an interesting idea.
That's an interesting idea. I know, so one feature that's been on our list for a while is kind of a worksheet view, in which, and I think this will be integrated into the sort of testing view eventually, in which multiple exercises are displayed kind of on a single page, much more like a worksheet, so that the student can kind of go through and answer all of them in one pass, and then have the whole set graded as a set. And I could definitely see doing a printable export of that along with that feature. That's something we have in testing, and it's going to need a little bit more development. So I don't think we would see it right away, but I like the idea, and could definitely see integrating that into the sort of worksheet mode.
I think that would be helpful for some people who find it easier on the eyes to do hard copy than screened.
Yeah, right? Sure.
So.
Absolutely. All right, well, cool. Well, thanks, Philomene, and Marion, and Kim. Right, so the idea here is to just have an easy way to kind of look at the overall unit progress of all your students, and kind of know which students are falling behind, maybe need additional help, or adjust which units are possibly optional after the fact, so that student can progress to the next thing if they've been locked out by lack of progress at that point. The other screen you'll see on the teacher dashboard is the recent student activity screen. This is basically meant to be a feed of the interactions the student is having in exercises. So if a student gets an exercise incorrect or correct, you would see that, and kind of when it happened. You can kind of have a better idea of when your students are doing their homework or when they're using it. And to some degree, I think we'll add in some more information here over time, as far as kind of how much time students are spending on things, and go from there. Again, this table can be easily exported so that you can do further analysis on it, or sort of figure out what issues students are having most. And I'm working on a screen to basically have this sort of be customizable, so you can pull the whole history of a student, sort by student, by class, have a lot more options in there. And then also this activity panel is searchable. So, just typing in wrong or a particular Lakota word would show up all the, responses from student. And as we get into kind of the live feed version of this, so if you are doing kind of a remote class and you have it in the live mode, which will be in the next version, having that filter in there does allow you to just look at the live feed of what students are getting wrong and which students are getting them wrong as they're getting them wrong. And so I thought that might be something that would be useful in the kind of remote learning world.
Elliot, if I can just jump in, it would be great if we could also search with and without the diacritic.
Oh, so
in other words, yeah, make the diacritic not essential to, because that will pull up some stuff that we may want to see.
Sure.
And it will be, it's easier for quick typing, honestly.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. Marion
yeah,
said
Marion
yes.
blew arms. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah. Yeah, that's not a hard thing to do. So I'll definitely add that in there. And right. So I think that's it for the teacher dashboard. I guess before we move on, I think that's sort of the last interface panel that we'll go through, and then we're going to hop into kind of live demo real quick. Are there any questions before we jump into the kind of next section? I think we're all okay for now. Okay. And so I wanted to go through a few upcoming changes and a few things that you'll kind of see announcements about, coming up into the next few weeks or months, as far as additional curriculum and features we're working on, just to kind of keep everyone informed and, have a few things to look forward to that, and if you guys have specific ideas on how you would view these, or ideas on features you would want to see in them, we're definitely always happy to have more feedback. So one thing is we've been working on converting the handbook curriculum, which is still a little ways off from release. I think we're kind of back and forth on whether to release it in chunks or just try and complete the whole thing. But we are excited with the kind of parts of the handbook curriculum we're currently testing, and I think with the handbook curriculum, it's definitely more advanced content and definitely more difficult. So as far as younger learners, it might not be ideal, but as far as giving content for teachers and advanced learners to push themselves forward, whether you've attempted to get through the Lakota Grammar Handbook already, or have it on your desk, the Owóksape version will hopefully make it, have another version out there to just create a little bit more access for it. And basically it'll be as close as a one-to-one copy of the handbook in a Owóksape format as we can. Additionally, I think sooner than the handbook release, we're working on a much larger vocab track for Owóksape, which I think will create a lot more opportunity for vocab lessons for teachers to integrate into their classes. So a lot of you are probably familiar with the Lakota Vocab Builder, which we are producing an additional new version of that as well, with a number of features and games and things. But as far as within the Owóksape ecosystem, we should have quite a few more words and vocabulary centric exercises and units available in the near future. Additionally, I'm sure a lot of you were members of the Lakota Forum at one time or another, and there's a number of sort of software features built into the Lakota Forum that we've created other versions of over time, or, I imagine most of you have used the New Lakota Dictionary software or app or book. And so our plan is to integrate the Lakota dictionary and the Lakota conjugation reference charts into Owóksape. And that's something we're working on for the much nearer future, as those conversions are fairly straightforward. And I think we'll giving easy access to those to students that are, getting into the teacher portal and doing some of the integrations that were found in the forum is something we've meant to do for a while, and we're kind of pushing that forward in the near future. All right.
Elliot, can I ask you on the vocab, a couple of questions on the vocab builder? Is it going to be integrated to Owóksape then with the freedom to add lessons that are out of order?
So one goal of the vocab builder that's always been different from Owóksape is its ability to exist completely offline. So I'm sure many of you have experienced that if you're, out on the road or in an area with very limited internet access, Owóksape is not always ideal. And so one thing that the vocab builder app is meant to be is the ability to do vocabulary exercises on the go. So the new version will uphold that as well, and won't be integrated directly into Owóksape. The vocab track curriculum for Owóksape will be its own section of Owóksape, separate from the main learning path. So above the idea of levels in Owóksape, where we currently have our kind of 4 beginner levels with the 128 units, you are able to switch paths. So the grammar handbook and the vocab track will both be released as sort of separate paths, and I can do a quick demo of how one switches between them if more than one exists, and when more than one exists in the future. And so.
Okay. And can we possibly get that vocab track without that you must do it in this order thing, the new one? So that you could use it separately for your students, right? But without having to say you absolutely positively must learn all these animals before you can learn, I don't know, how plant names or, weather
right.
or whatever.
So just as with any other curriculum that currently exists, within the teacher portal, you would be able to arrange these vocab units. So the list that's currently on my screen there is the list of, currently proposed list of topical units that each one would include between 20 and 50 or so vocabulary words for that unit.
And Matt Rama wanted to know what the time frame is for all of this. And Courtney has a question on the chat that he's posted.
So the time frame on the dictionary integration, I would say, would probably be in the next 2 months or so. The vocab track, all that curriculum has sort of been generated and is currently in review and testing. I think that's something we could see, probably in the next month or so, depending on the timing of the people we have available to, review Lakota and make sure all that curriculum is totally set for release. As far as the grammar handbook, as far as the entirety of the grammar handbook, I don't think we would have that completed, at least for another year. But we are talking about doing some supplementary releases of the first however many units we have complete, as we do that. At this point, I think there's 200 something units in the grammar handbook. So it's fairly extensive and has been fairly time consuming to put that together. And then what was the other question, Kim? Or sorry.
Courtney wants to know about downloadable workbooks. It's on the chat. It's on the regular Zoom chat. The workbook going to be available for downbooks? Yeah.
That's a good question. As far as, so are you talking about the textbooks?
I'm not sure. Yeah, he says yes.
Yes. I know we've had discussions in the past regarding how to release a lot of our content on ebook format. One thing that's always been a barrier to that is the number of just different platforms, file types, restrictions, and complexity in doing such a release. I think it's always been on our radar to kind of watch how ebook technology and different things like that are kind of working out. I don't think it would be in the near future that we would release a full PDF version. It would probably be in a ebook format, which there's specific ones that are really sort of taking hold in Android and iOS that we may reapproach that at some point in the future. Yeah. Does that answer your question? But as far as the worksheet export we were talking about in Owóksape, I mean, I think that feature is not too far off. We've done quite a bit of development in kind of putting that worksheet mode into place, and I could see doing a PDF export of that as being a pretty simple next step to drop in, and that would be
awesome.
Definitely built into the the teacher portal. And as well as, I think we had some plans to integrate more worksheet style testing exercise kinds of things into the main path as well. So I don't know if those would be exportable, but anything in the classroom and teacher portal side, I could see it working out fine to include that export. All right. And let me go back real quick to see if I'm on schedule. All right, so I guess we've done a bit of, so the next thing I was gonna do is a quick account setup so that I can kind of run through from a clean account and show you exactly how this works out so that everyone would have a good idea of how to set up your account. Right. Okay, and did that, let me see, I think I have to, is everyone able to see my screen, or can you see it, Kim?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay, so it's not, I know the spotlight was
It's
there.
really teeny, it's teensy tiny, but it's seeable.
Okay,
I'm on a small
okay,
computer.
I'll fix that real quick. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I think I have to remove the spotlight thing. Cancel spotlight. And sorry, there's always a, okay, how's that?
It's tiny. Just keep going, Elliot. Keep going. I'm on a laptop, so
Oh,
I
okay.
just don't have a big screen. Yeah.
Okay, sure. All right, so the first time you log into your, okay, Roger said, okay, you guys can see it? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. The first time you log into your teacher portal account, and let me, okay, you'll see that a new teachers tab has been created at the top here. So, you know, as soon as you log in, you'll be at kind of like the normal incoming screen. And then you can pop over to the teachers tab and you'll see this kind of introduction, which from the dashboard, that'll change pretty quickly, but just to kind of, you know, rehash some of the things we discussed. So the first thing that's necessary to do to get started creating a classroom is to go to the lessons tab. And again, you know, you'll see yourself as a teacher in the administrator tab if you do have an admin account. But all teachers, whether it's an admin account or not, would have this lessons tab. So I can create a new lesson. And I have no units yet, which will be the same for your account getting started. And so I just hit submit. And now I have access to all the units that are in the first 4 units of Owóksape. So I'll just give myself, or, you know, give my class a few basics in, you know, word stress. And I think I wanted to do the thank you. Yeah, expressing gratitude. So I'll just do a little quick 2-unit class and then hit save. And so now these 2 lessons have been added to my lesson. And all you need is, even with an empty lesson plan, you'd be able to create a classroom from that lesson. So since I have no new classrooms yet, I'll just click add new classroom. And we've got a webinar classroom set up. And we'll start it today. And depending on your browser, you'll see a different calendar input. Every browser kind of has its own standard calendar input. They're all fairly similar, but if yours looks different from this, this is Firefox. Chrome looks just a little bit different, but they all work about the same. And I won't necessarily need this webinar classroom tomorrow, so I'll just have it end on the weekend. And then the only lesson plan I have so far is the webinar lesson, so that's selected. So I'll hit submit there, and then my 2 lessons have shown up. And so I don't have any students yet. And so for this class, I'm just going to kind of demo a pre-made lesson, or pre-made bunch of students, which I should have double checked which one. I think it's this one. Yeah, so this is just adding a couple of my coworkers to the classroom, and I want to add them to the webinar classroom as well as the school. So I'll hit submit there. And now they're in my class. And so as soon as these accounts, which many of them were pre-existing, log in, they'll now have a classroom tab to go to. And then one little bug, which we'll see, is that as soon as I've created this classroom, I should be able to demo it for myself. So I just have to refresh real quick, and then the classroom tab shows up now that I have a classroom that I'm the teacher of. So if I go to that classroom, I then see that I'm a teacher in the class, and people would be able to ask me questions. And one thing that I'd kind of like to get feedback on from teachers is, currently we have it set up so that if a user has already completed curriculum, their progress stays. So that doesn't mean that they can't go back and redo a lesson or complete one that was half finished. But you'll be able to see whether that student has already done or previously done it. And at this point, I think our plan is to keep all the progress across Owóksape. So if a student's in multiple classes or goes to an event or does Owóksape on their own, all of that progress would be maintained across any particular thing that student participates in. That does not mean that you can't lock that exercise until a particular date that you would want them to redo it. But if they have worked through Owóksape on their own for fun, that particular unit's progress would always be there for that student. And if you guys have any ideas on a good way to handle that, sort of knowing, especially if you've already had your students working through Owóksape, if there's a better way for that to handle it, or a switch I should build to flip for it to work certain ways, let me know on that. But then from that, the user can just jump right into curriculum and continue on from there. So that's and it looks like we've got a couple little layout issues here, but we'll fix that at some point. And all right, so any questions on account setup or any thoughts on that?
Elliot, did you figure out the Chrome browser thing or not? Because
yeah, the Chrome browser
Chrome.
thing's totally fixed. So you shouldn't.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, well, with the recent Chrome update, we had some issues with some new requirements from Chrome, but with this update, that's all been fixed as well. And then if I were to have multiple classrooms, you'd be able to switch between them here or from this menu as well. All right. So I think what we'll do from here is I'll go ahead and anyone, I'm just going to add everyone to, I think, oh wait, Chris is the host now. So I think the idea after this point would be to do a hands-on training. So did anyone have trouble logging into their Owóksape account or was not a teacher at this point? So I think the presentation at this point is fairly concluded, and I think most teachers would be able to kind of do those few steps to kind of pull their students in and so on. So I guess, so Hamatane is still having issues with the password. So an email was sent to everyone that registered prior to, I think like just a little bit before the presentation started. So if you already had a pre-existing account that has the email that you registered for this with, it has been turned into a teacher account with the name of the school that you registered with. If you didn't already have an account, I've created one for everyone with a password that you should see in your email. And Chris is going to add everyone as a panelist so we can kind of see each other and have more of a discussion for the second half, as well as kind of continuing to demo and see if anyone has trouble with the classroom interface or any questions getting set up, or possibly specific use cases that you would have in mind. And then I guess the other thing I wanted to bring up that I think maybe Kim could speak to a little bit for a few moments is, in your experience with teacher training, Kim, I mean, and we've kind of had a few discussions on this. I would say that the way we've set up Owóksape at this point and the way the teacher portal works is really going to be more of a supplement to face-to-face teaching and curriculum. And I think, and Kim and I have kind of discussed ways to kind of pull some of the units into, working better with communicative methods and so on. But maybe Kim, you could talk a little bit about, what pitfalls there might be in, having more screen time for kids, or how this might integrate well.
Yeah, I mean, myself, obviously, I see it more as homework, or a kind of if you've had a very excitable communicative activity in your class where students are up and really moving around and you need them to quiet down for a while, or if you have a class that has really different levels and you want to work with students who are moving along maybe more slowly, but you need something for your stronger students to do in the meantime, you would maybe be able to assign a unit or two of this for them to work on. So it doesn't have that gaminess of, oh God, Marion, help me here, of, or Elliot, you know which one I'm talking about. The one that everybody uses online, Kahoot. It doesn't have the gaminess feel of Kahoot, right? So it's not going to be really wildly exciting for students to use in class the way a Kahoot activity tends to be, right? So
I think it's great for
so
when you can't be there and you need a substitute teacher, they can work
exactly
on their own.
Yeah, exactly. It's great for substitute. It's great when you need different parts of your class to be doing different things, right? It's great for, it's going to be great for homework. It's great for, what I like it for is basically all that stuff that you would keep saying, okay, you need to put hey at the end of your question, or this is ablaut to e, and you don't want to have to necessarily keep correcting them as they're doing a communicative activity, right? So, and it just, this could help if they could do these exercises and then come in and they're kind of so in the mode of putting hey or whoa at the end of a question, which a lot of people forget for a while, or they are used to the ablaut going one way and then the other way in the question and a different way in the answer, then those things that we tend to have to stop and do our correction cues and all that kind of stuff, that could be something that this would solve. And then in the classroom, you can work on what is really the hardest part that can't be done by a machine, which is the communicative language stuff, right? So I see this as a way to work with the nuts and bolts of the language and get students practicing outside of class with them getting feedback, right? And then your classroom is really the space where you can say, okay, now you know how to do this kind of question. You know how to conjugate. You've practiced it a bunch. Let's get up and talk to each other, right? So that's where I see this could be really useful. I would love to have one of these actually for French, which we don't have. So basically, and then as I say, if you have students that need to do work while other students in your class are moving a little slower and you want to do a repeat, but you want your faster students to keep going, this is going to be great for homework kind of stuff. So there, and for substitutes, as Marion says. So there's all kinds of uses for it. Courtney asked me on the other, you have two sets of questions running. By the way, Elliot, I think one is running through the Facebook webinar. And so, yeah, so I'm trying to answer those questions too, because they keep popping up. But one of the questions Courtney asked is, would we go in order? And I don't think you necessarily would go in the order. That's the advantage of the interface right now, that you can pull the lessons out. For example, what number did we say, what is your name is, Elliot? It's unit 45 or something like that. For me, in most classes I teach, which are for older students or adults, that would be the first unit. So I would want to pull that out and have it as lesson 1 and something they practiced. And then they've practiced the takoe chiapihe, takoe ni chiapihe, kim e ma chiapi. They've practiced that in the typing and in the exercise. And then when I have them come into class, they're going to be able to say it back and forth, right? So because they've had some practice, they've had some familiarity with it. And that's going to be easier. Maybe you'll introduce it in class. They go home and do the exercises, homework. They come back. And now this feels easy in terms of communication because they practice those little nuts and bolts, like swapping the ni to the ma. So that's where I see your advantage could be. I think everybody will find their own, but I also think the real strength of this is to pull these lessons out of the original order. Every one of you will have an order that works better with your students, right? So I think that's the awesome thing. And the one thing that Elliot is working on that I don't think maybe is ready for today is for us to have a map as to what's where as teachers. So we know we're not searching through endless numbers of lessons to find, okay, I want to do, you know, I want to do class 1 verbs or something, or I want to do something about going camping, or I want to do something that has setting up a teepee, and you know, that we have kind of like a table of contents or an index, so that we can find and build our lessons quickly in a way that fits our curriculum. So hopefully what this does, and that's why I was asking Elliot all the questions also about the vocab builder, even if it's downloadable and it's separate from this, can we not make it a fixed order of progress, right? Because for adult learners, you just don't want to have them learning all those animals. That's not their primary interest, right? They want to learn other things first. So I think this is what frees it up from a fixed order and lets every teacher customize. That's awesome. That's awesome, right? We're not to the point where you can pick out, and I did ask the question because there's some things that I wouldn't want to introduce right away. For example, in the exercise 45, there's Owóksape. I might not introduce that right away. And I think we're a ways away, Elliot, am I correct, for where you would be picking out individual questions that you would want to use and maybe saving some for later?
Yeah, and I mean, we talked just the other day about creating the option of kind of removing specific exercises and lessons from a unit, so that you've got a slimmed down unit, or a unit that excludes anything that you might think is too, you know, difficult or off topic for your students. And I started building that out yesterday, and it was coming along pretty well. You know, I was kind of pushing to just kind of make sure this release was up for today. And there's a number of other things that are going to get popped into place pretty quickly. But as far as the, you know, tables to be able to input the unit names and so on, that's kind of all in place. So that should be another thing that in the next release, I'm hoping to just kind of pop another one out this week.
Yeah. Okay, so if there's a way to even take out like an individual, and I think that's what Elliot and I were talking about, if I have an exercise that's tako e nichiapi, kim e machiapi, and I want to keep it singular, and I don't want e wichakiapi on the first day, there would be a way to remove that question from an exercise. So really fine-grained customizing of activities, which I think is an awesome possibility. We're going to have to play with it. We're all going to have to play with it a bit and see how it works and what we need. But Elliot's been very receptive to everything. I've had like one lesson more than you guys have had, so I'm about 1 second ahead of you, right? But he's been really receptive to various features and what have you. So I think we all just need to play with it for a while.
Kim?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't have a video, a camera anyway. But I just I have I guess as speaking from a teaching point of view of teaching students, I guess, well, because I asked that question, and you answered it, because I tend to, when I teach, jump around. I do the emachiapi, enichiapi, just to introduce themselves. So that's good that we can jump around like that. But I joined the webinar because as a teacher, we're kind of lost right now because my school district is going to go totally online. There's going to be no students in the school. So I have to change the way I teach. The way I learned was hands-on, total physical response, all of that stuff. And now I have to attempt to get these lessons across using, I think we're using Google Classroom, and I have no idea what I'm doing, but I think this is just one of the supplemental things I can use.
Yeah, and if you want to email me, Courtney, we've been doing an awful lot of online teaching. I'm happy to give you some ideas, or anybody, I mean, and we've been teaching online actually all summer, and I've been doing it for 10 years. So I'll just pitch my email in the chat. And, I'm happy to talk to people about stuff I'm doing online. I don't want to, hijack Elliot's presentation on this, but, anybody who wants to, who has questions or ideas or wants some ideas, I'm happy to talk to anybody, right? Just email me. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that, I think part of this presentation is what else, what else is needed for remote learning. I think the entire idea of getting the teacher portal out there was to, help supplement what Lakota teachers have available to them. And I think, me and other people at, TLC and LLC are definitely happy to provide whatever support we're able to, kind of in that sense. Yeah.
Elliot, do you remember the old MIT program? It was something Life, Second Life, I think it was. Do you remember that program? Basically, everybody had avatars and you could move them around and what have you. We need a program like that. This would be actually the revolution for online teaching. We need a program that everybody gets an avatar. We can move them around. They can interact with other people. They can be in rooms or settings or what have you. They could be simple settings to start out. But what would be really neat is to have a Second Life kind of program where we could have students interacting as their avatars. Marion just said, yeah. So, if you want to know what our dream thing is, that's the dream thing.
I think, Kim, Google Classroom has something like that, an avatar classroom.
Avatar classroom. Okay. Yeah. I'll have to check it out because I use Zoom, right? That's what my schools use. So, but I have to check that out because we need the avatar interaction. That would be I think the gold standard for online teaching, where students are interacting just the same way they would in a real situation with a setting and, whatever, they're like at a store or something and they're going in to buy something and they're having the conversation between two avatars. That would be awesome, actually. So, but I think that's the future dream. Now we have this. So I'm going to shut up and go back to Elliot and see if we can get people on. You have a question from Donna on your other question. I had previously set up my account and is designated as a student. So can she get switched? This is Donna Fielding to
I'm
teacher.
For, so is your Donna, is your email, let me see if I have my email list here. Yeah, what email is your old account under? Is it the Donna.Fielding?
It's donna.fielding@k12.sd.us.
Okay, let me see if, sorry, I'm trying to.
It looks like I'm set up as an administrator because I was able to set up a classroom and
Oh, okay.
a lesson, but it's just on my profile. It says that under my little picture, it says EMS student, and you have the school, correct? East Middle School.
Oh, is that part of your profile information? So if you're looking in the settings and then profile, is that information just typed in there, or where is that showing up?
It's showing up on the profile page, and right under my little picture, it's designated in blue. It says EMS student.
Okay, yeah, if you just change the text there, and then I think there's a little blue arrow that we should probably make bigger just to the right of that. That should save it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so you were able to set up a classroom, okay?
Yes,
All right, would it,
and a lesson and all that kind of good stuff.
okay, would anyone be willing to, share their screen and kind of walk through any issues you're having, or just kind of show off what class you're putting together? And then additionally, I think I had added all the participants here to a classroom I had previously prepared. So if you all would want to do some lessons, and then I could kind of show off how the dashboard looks as progress kind of comes in. And in order to do that, if you go to classrooms, and then you should see a demo classroom under your classrooms there.
Say, Elliot, this is Tama. I'm still unable to log in. The emails that you had sent, those passwords are not working at all for me.
I tested it right before we got on. Let me look at whether it's it might be.
I'm not sure if this would be the case or not, but I actually had a different account initially. A new one was created with my new email with the K-12. I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not, but I did have two accounts originally, or a account originally, and then this was created for me. So
Here, I'll send you a private message with the exact spelling and capitalization and everything that's in the database, and we'll see. But if you want me to set up, would it be better if your old account were set up?
No, that's fine. I would prefer this new.
Okay.
Just because the other was my old school.
Sure.
All right, thanks.
And you have like a thing for Marion, who probably does have about 5 different email accounts.
Yeah, and Marion, the Marion.Bluearm at K-12, I just made it as a teacher and added you to, what school are you at, Marion? Are you at
Cheyenne River, the preschool.
Okay, for now, just as a demo, I threw you into, well, I'll set that up real quick.
Okay, thank you. Because I want to get started on the real thing, be able to add classes and stuff that I actually will use here very, very soon. I'm so excited about this. This is awesome, you guys. What a gift to all of us teachers.
Elliot?
Sure.
So on the link that you sent to Owóksape, do I have to sign up now, or am I already in there as a teacher?
If you received an email from me today, you either already had an account, in which case it would be your old credentials, or I created an account with the password I sent. I sent a typo in the first email. I'm really sorry, everybody. But the Lakota Teacher 12345 is the password, and I would suggest changing that right away. And then is it Tamatane?
Yeah, Tamatane.
Tamatane?
Yep.
Yeah, I just sent you exactly what's in my database as an account, so that should work for you. And that would just be logging in, not from Google, but in the main sign-in screen.
Right. So
Yeah.
I got it. It worked. So thank you.
Okay, awesome.
Right.
And then next I'm gonna get Marion. Did you say Cheyenne River, Marion?
Yes, Dupree's on Cheyenne River. It's between Faith and Eagle Butte.
Oh wait, so Dupree School?
Yeah, Dupree.
Correct.
Dupree School.
Okay, so now I'm in.
Okay, right on.
You. This is it. This is it.
All right, mute yourself, huh, brother?
Oh, sorry about that, guys. I was just excited because I finally got in. My bad.
And there you go.
So clearly, I approve.
Right on. All right, Marion, you should be set up with Dupree School now.
Okay, Elliot, I was trying to log in too, using the email courtney.yellowfat@k12.nd.us with that password, and it's not letting me in.
Is it the password from the? Well, let me just.
The Lakota
search.
Teacher 12345.
Yeah, let me bring you up real quick and make sure it's not something. Because yours may have been pre-existing. Just one moment.
You sure it wasn't just teacher? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So yours was set up today. Wait, no, Courtney, your account is quite old. Are you still there, Courtney?
My account's old.
Yeah, so you have a pre-existing password in there. Do you want me to reset it for you?
Sure.
Okay.
Because I probably don't remember it.
Right on. Yeah, it's okay. I should be able to do that real quick. 1 second.
Nice to see you, Sue.
Good to see you. Or at least your name.
Well, you can hear my
I
voice.
hear your voice, yeah.
Your name says Esther Hall.
Well, that's because that's.
You can change it. You can right click the 3 dots on top of your screen and you can put any name you want.
Oh, I did not know that.
Except for mine isn't working.
And while I'm kind of doing these little bug fixes for folks, if there's any other if there's any other discussion about what people are doing in the fall, as teachers are going into remote learning, or any other ideas anyone has for feedback on the interface or ideas you'd like to see implemented. I guess the floor is open if anyone has kind of some specific ideas on how it could be improved, or what we'd like to, or what you'd like to see.
So Elliot, in a nutshell, I teach middle school 5, 6, 7, 8. I can take my 5th grade class. I take their emails or whatever and add them to a classroom, right?
Right.
And then I can assign them, let's say unit 1, 2, 3, 4 or whatever. And they only have access to unit 1, 2, 3, 4 until I open up another couple units or so.
As far as from the classroom view, yes. The normal progression of the Owóksape path is still there. So a while back, we unlocked the first 20 units of, it was kind of right at the beginning of lockdown. We unlocked the first 20 units of Owóksape just to kind of let people explore a little more. And so that'll still be the case. So if your students just get curious and start going through some other units on their own, they'd be able to do that. But as far as what you'll see as their classroom progress and what they'll see in their classroom view, you have control over that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Couple of questions, Elliot. Shoot, where did my thing go?
And Courtney, your password should be reset to the one everyone else is using now.
Elliot.
Okay.
It shows me as Red Cloud School. When I sign in, I'm in Red Cloud School, not Dupree. And I need to be able to change the name that I had in there, like my own name. Can I do that somehow?
So you would change your visible name from the profile settings. So from within the profile.
Okay, I can try that.
Well, actually, can you? I guess you can't
my
change
name
your
is
name.
my name is 82, which indicated the second group of 8th graders last year, but that
Here,
needs
I'll
to
just,
change.
that's something I didn't even, I could have sworn we had an interface for that, but it doesn't look like we do. I'll change it for you real quick.
Okay, just to my name, please. And please change it to Dupree School and not Red Cloud.
Now that I thought I had already done. Let me see what's up here. And you're logged in.
With K12, Marion.Bluearm at K12.sd. Whatever. That's the one I need to use, the K12 one. K12.sd.us. It says Red Cloud School, which is a great school, but I'm not there.
Yeah, sorry about that. I mean, and just to kind of, so one thing is that, with anything new, there's likely to be a few bugs that pop up. So if you do have any trouble, I do watch there's a doorbell button on the right-hand side, pretty much everywhere, or actually a feedback button in the top right corner on the web version. And so if you click that feedback there, it goes directly to my email, and I look at those and try and reply to a lot of them. Don't always have time to reply to all of them. But if you have any issues, that's a direct email that, buzzes on my phone and everything. So feel free to hit that as often as you like. And then, sorry, Marion.
3 a.m. We're gonna get you. That's
3 a.m.
There we go. Ham. Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, Elliot, this is Roger. I have a question. So I was introduced to this like a couple years ago, and my students, I used it as a supplemental. I didn't use it for grading or anything, but some of my students really liked it, but some of the problems were with pictures not loading. I wonder if those issues were fixed, and will we have that problem? I mean, this is the first time I found out that we were able to use it on a browser. I didn't know it was on a browser. I always use it on my cell phone with the students. So I was just wondering if those issues were fixed, because I noticed a lot of students were complaining. They said, yeah, we did it, but the pictures weren't downloading and it was unstable. And so so I didn't use it as a grading source, but more or less as a supplemental practice for my students. But I mean, given that it's now browser available now for all my students, is that what you're saying here now? So all they have to do is, once I put them in there, they're able to access it from their Chrome browsers, because all our students at Red Cloud have Chromebooks now. So
yeah, so so we've had the web version of it up since the beginning. I mean, one thing that has happened over time is, I mean, we've really tried to balance our development between the website and the mobile version. I've been doing quite a bit of work on the mobile side to get the classroom version of the mobile app up. I know we fixed one of the bugs that was causing images to not show up. So if it's in the early units, I would just double check to make sure that you've got the most updated version there. But we have discovered a few more bugs with images not showing up on the mobile version. And I believe I've fixed those as well. And as soon as I get this classroom version out the door, those should be fixed, as well as we had some bug fixes in some of the fill in the blank questions on mobile. And so we did some of those fixes in the last version we released, which it's been a little while now since we've released one. So the way the development generally works is we'll find bugs and have features we're aiming to add, and we'll kind of have a whole pile of those done between releases. So it might be fixed on my version that I'm doing testing on and have some other people testing on it, but not necessarily fixed in the live version yet. And I think all the issues with images not showing up, we've solved, and I'm going to try and get this classroom version of the mobile app out as fast as I can. It might be a little while, but I'll try and I think the email list of everyone that showed up for the webinar, I'll maybe send an invite to an email list to kind of get updates on all the specific releases for this. And then Marion, I think I've got you set up now with Dupree School. Can you double check that?
Thank you. Yes. Yes, I can't make any changes and there's some glitches, but trying to understand this here. Like, I don't know how to add the students in. I'm on this page. It says from this page you can, but nothing can be clicked on, nothing.
So let me just go ahead and I'll do a screen recording here of the exact process for pulling the template, filling it in, and maybe that would be helpful for people in this last.
And you have a question from Carolyn Taylor also, who wants to share her screen and ask a question at some point.
Okay, while I'm getting set up to demo the download, Carolyn, do you want to share your screen and go ahead and ask your question? I can't hear you, Carolyn.
You're muted. You're muted, Carolyn. You're muted. Can you unmute her, Elliot?
I think I can put in a request.
I'm not the.
How about now?
Oh, very good. Yep.
There we go.
Thank you. So I got it. I got this far anyway.
Cool.
Just so you can see it. So now, how do I go about to input my list? We have on our Infinite Campus, I think we can export in Excel. Would that be a good way to do it?
Yeah, and the way you would want to do it probably, here, I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen and kind of run through the demo of doing exactly that.
Okay.
Oops. So let me get, sorry, where did it go?
And then how do I delete the Unit 1 colors? I somehow got it in there twice.
Oh, so with the drag and drop, and I'm going to add a little trash can probably. If you go back to your lesson plans there, and this will be a good thing to kind of show. And this is, yeah. So if you just drag it back over to the left and hit save.
Okay.
And then click here to save. That should do it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
Great.
And then Carolyn, if I can stop your sharing, I'll go ahead and share my screen and kind of run through the import.
All right.
Okay, great. Okay, so from within the admin menu, if you click this template button here, it will download. Are you guys able to see my screen just to make sure?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. And then this will bring up an Owóksape users form.
Okay.
You'll have to hit enable editing. I mean, I don't know if that's true for all software, but for mine it is. And then you'll want to make sure, so the student ID field is optional and the last name field is optional, but everything else is required. So the first name, if you haven't entered in a last name, it just needs something to create a display name from. And just so you all know, the default I put in for if you're creating new accounts is just first name and last initial. And then also the date of birth will, if the user is, I forget exactly what the age is. It might be 18 or 13, if they're under a certain age, the village forum should be blocked for them. And then also the leaderboard is blocked for younger students as well. And then in the roles field, this is required, but for the most part, if you set one as student and then drag it down for however many students you have, you just want to have them marked as student and not have them dropped in as teacher. You know, the password, the requirements at this point are pretty lax just to kind of keep it easy for everybody. But I would suggest putting in, you know, a fairly decently complex password. And then the emails, if you don't have emails for all your students, what I would suggest is, I don't know how, so I'll just do a fake one real quick. So let's say I've got a kid named Bob Rue. If you just make one up, that'll be acceptable. We won't be able to send them email notifications, but if you just need to have a student have an account, you know, you can just set, you know, well, you could do it many different ways, but this is how I would do it. Oops. Yeah, and so, you know, and then for whatever students you have, I'll make one called Jill as well. And have 2 students there. And I wouldn't suggest having your students all have the same password, but, you know, I guess do your best. And I think most of this information you would have on a roster where you could just copy and paste each column, and then if you need to fill in students or so on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just let you guys know when my birthday is. And so then if I save this and then come back over to my classroom, and then I choose the file, enter the form, and now it's populated this form with the information I put in there so that I can double check it, make sure everything's good. If there's a student I accidentally have in there or the roster has more people than I actually want to add, you can delete those before you do the import. If you have student IDs, it'll pull those from the sheet if those are important for you to get in your exports. And then I can either add them to the demo classroom as well as the school or just the school.
Excuse me, Elliot, how did you get from where I was to that, to the add student and teacher screen? What was the first thing you clicked on?
So in the admin panel.
Admin, you went back to admin, okay.
Okay, and then create new accounts.
Okay.
And then I downloaded the template right here, which I could make that button bigger. That might be a good thing to make that a little more obvious. Right, so then once I've got my students set up, I hit submit. And then they should show up right here as Bob R and Jill A. And this is where, yeah, go ahead.
Elliot, you're creating their passwords, right? And they could put anything they want as a password, basically.
Yeah.
And can students change that after?
Yes. So within the login view, let me do this from a different spot real quick. So the way you would, so I'm also going to add some features. So if you create a student account and need to reset their password, I've almost got that feature finished up and ready to go, as well as some other sort of student administrative kind of things. But if you forgot your password with any account, you can just click the forgot password button and enter your email, and it'll send you an email with a code to set a new password. So that's the process we've got set up for any user to reset their password, which would be true of student users as well. As far as, so there's restrictions I've put in place on, so if a student already has a Google account, which would be true of any student imported from Google Classroom once we have that working, these sort of view passwords and reset passwords things would not be possible. And Kim. Oh, and Kim said that you probably shouldn't use their school
Yeah,
password.
I wouldn't use their official school password. You know,
Sure.
I don't know how much security you built in, Elliot, but I can see all sorts of legal issues and stuff. I think I would have a separate password for this, honestly.
Yeah, and it's you know, and I think we're yeah. So I mean, I'm not too worried about us. All the passwords are kind of like hashed and encrypted, and so the ability for people to pull passwords out isn't great. As far as if, you know, I mean, really the scenario in which, you know, a student's email gets their school email or however it gets taken over, then someone would be able to reset their password here. But other than that, there's not a great way to pull their password out other than, you know, just doing a reset. So so if you enter those passwords in plain text here, as soon as they enter the system, they're no longer in plain text. So as far as the, you know, and the site is always required to have SSL, which shouldn't be an issue for most people to get in. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely some possibility. So, I mean, I think what you're saying is correct in that using unique passwords is a great idea. But as far as the, you know, security issues with Owóksape, I think we've mostly been fairly careful.
Yeah, okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. But then, you know, in case you would get in trouble with your school or whatever for sharing it beyond the school environment ecosystem, you might want to have a different password for this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Elliot.
Yeah, go ahead.
Two things. So if I always run into the problem of being a teacher. I had them all set up on Memrise before, you know, kind of a supplemental thing, and they always come back and say, "I forgot my password." You know, on Memrise, I can't go in and change anything, but can I view their passwords as a teacher? And
so the feature I've implemented, but for this release, it's not in there yet. Just because I wanted to get some more feedback on how school accounts are being managed, and also just make sure what we're going to do is compatible with Google Classroom. But no, I've built a reset password button. So whereas you won't ever be able to pull the password out other than doing an initial export of your student roster. So after you import, I'll probably have something that gives you kind of a report to make sure you have an export of all those users. So if you keep your initial import spreadsheet, that would give you a list. But after that point in time, there won't be an export passwords or view passwords, but I will allow you to reset them. So you'll be able to reset a password for a student from within the classroom view, which has that student roster list for your classroom, as well as the administrator view.
Okay, Elliot, can you I was fooling around with Owóksape. That's kind of how I learned. I guess I start pressing buttons sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, and that's great because I'm sure there's a bug or two in there that I'll find out about soon.
So can you screen share again?
Yeah, here I'll screen share. Yeah, 1 second.
Yeah. What I'm looking at is okay, I'm on there as a teacher and everything's correct, but how do I add students? Like if I want to do a whole 5th grade class and 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, like that. So the screen you had before where it was all like in a spreadsheet, is that how I can add a lot of students to one class?
Yeah, so if you have your rosters divided up, all you need to do is download that template, which is the file you download when you click the template button there.
Oh, okay.
And then that template will look like this here. Can you see my Excel?
Yes.
So yeah, so like I said, the student ID and the last name fields are optional, but everything else is required. So this is where you'd go to set up those accounts.
Okay.
And so once you have this all filled out, and I tried to make a couple little notes in there, so you'll see that this one, requires it be either student or teacher, and it has a little drop down, so that should be pretty easy. And I might make a new version of this that has a password generator, but I know as far as, students and passwords can be a little difficult. So if teachers have their own systems, I didn't really want to constrain that. But yeah, I might add a little button that says generate passwords for my students so that you can give them something that's decent and kind of complex.
Well, in the past, I have used, I have, maybe I shouldn't be doing that, but I cleared it with the school to let them use their school password on other things because they always remember that, Yeah. So, but I have to get it cleared with the school again. So it's their school password. But how do I create a class again? Can you just
Yeah, sure. And one thing I would suggest, there's a concept in passwords called salting, like SALT, like salt shaker. Yeah. And so anytime you reuse a password, it's best to add a little salt, which is just some variation on the password. So for instance, if you had their school password and then added on, Owóksape to the end, or Lakota, or something they'll remember just as an extra word. But adding that actually, since most passwords are not kept in plain text, adding that completely changes what would be seen in a database. And I don't know, it's just a good idea to salt your passwords. If you use a similar password across multiple sites, just a little salt.
Virtual High School, this is Carolyn.
And then in the create, and somebody's.
Hold on, let me mute my screen.
Oh, thank you. So in order to create a classroom, and I'll actually create a second classroom using the same demo lesson plan. So I'm going to click the add new classroom button. And if you haven't created a new classroom yet, this will look a little different. It'll just say add new classroom right here. And so then I'll do demo classroom 2. And start it today. And I'm just going to use the same lesson plan. So you can reuse lesson plans across classes, but I'll just kind of show you what happens if you do that. So now I've got an empty class because nobody's joined this class yet, but I do see all the students in my school over here. So I can add students that are in my school to this class. Now they would have demo class 2 available in their classroom. And then I've got 2 classes with the same demo lesson plan here. And so if I go back to lesson plan and I want to add something to both of them, so I'll just add an animals unit and a vocab unit to both, and click save. And now both of them both classes have the animals and vocab unit. And so you can switch between your classes over here, and then that also switches. Yeah, and it looks like Don did a little progress, got 41% through unit 16. And, nobody else showed up to school, I guess. So
he's a teacher's pet. That's he's
yeah, right.
Stuff like that,
I'm a try hard.
All right, cool.
Okay.
All right, well, we're about out of time. Any final questions or comments or ideas? It's been a pleasure having you all here, and I'm totally honored and excited that so many people showed up, and that it's I gotta say it's great making stuff for the Lakota language. So I'm very happy to be involved with such a community. So yeah, go ahead.
So I work with the high school students.
Sure.
And some of them already have an account on Owóksape. Now, I understand how you set up like initial classes and things like that you went through, going through Excel. Now, if they already have an account set up, or they log in to Owóksape by themselves, will I be able just to add them that way, or am I going to have to create a spreadsheet initially to start my classes? Because I'm going to be starting in 3 weeks here. I don't have my classes yet, but as soon as I get my classes and get to meet students, would it be easier? Like I said, I work with the older students, for them to log in themselves, create their own passwords, and then I can come in and add them later to my classroom?
Yeah, so you've got a couple options there. So I'll share my screen again. So the other easy way to add students, and I kind of had older students in mind with this, is if they already have an Owóksape login, or if they can register on their own just fine, you can create an invitation link that will work to add them to the class. So you would just come to, so you'd go to create invitation link, and then do one for demo class 2, generate the link, which this link is generated from a combination of Lakota words with all the diacritics. I've gotten mixed reviews on whether it's a good idea, but I'm leaving it for now. And so then I'll just place this in chat, and everyone that hasn't already joined demo class 2, you would be able to, wait, where is chat? Is there no chat here?
Yeah, that should be across the
there we go.
bottom panel there.
Yeah, sorry. Right, so anyone that would follow that link, and I'll just use one of my other accounts I've got popped up here to follow that link, just to kind of make sure it works. So what the student would say is, and it looks like I might have an issue here. So I've gotten through testing most of this on a couple different servers, but it looks like I've got some bug here. Well, the idea would be, it would say your classroom link is valid, which it got that far figuring that out. And then it would say exactly what class they're joining, and then you just have to hit accept. And so I'll make sure that gets working right away.
Okay, because that sounds, I mean, for the high school students, that might be easier for them. And because
Sure.
I'll probably have about 2 or 4 different classes, so I could send them each a separate link, and they could just join the classes themselves then, right?
Right on.
With that link option.
Yeah, and then,
Yeah, instead of me going through an Excel and typing each one in and
yeah, and that also allows them to sign up with their Google account or social account,
Yeah.
which might be easier as far as them never forgetting their password and so on.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, because and I'll still have access to their passwords though as the teacher admin, right?
Well, so if you use the invite link, or if the account is pre-existing, the reset password functionality is blocked. But with older students that would already have an account, like the idea I was going with there is, if somebody's capable of registering themselves using the sign up, they're capable of hitting this forgot password button.
Yeah, exactly.
So if the account's pre-existing, I didn't want to give teachers the ability to just kind of take over somebody's account. But if you create an account, you're basically an administrator of that account.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. All right, answers my question. Thanks.
All right. Yeah, and I'm going to try one more time to use that link, see if it was just that I was in an oddball account. So this is signing in with a Google account, so it should not have any other stuff going on. Yeah, looks like I've got an issue there, but I'll solve that pretty quick. It's been kind of a marathon getting stuff ready for the webinar. So, all right, well, we're right at the 2-hour mark. Any last minute questions as we're in the last minute?
I got one.
Okay.
I teach in a little school, K through 12. Now we're doing blended right off the bat. Some are coming in school and some are distant learning. So I think our kindergartners are going to go to school. No, they're going to stay home. So how do I implement them? Can I get them once a week? How do I do the little kids, K through what, 3?
Kim, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I would say give them, this is probably going to help you out on that, Don, because you can give them some of these exercises to work on when they're home, right? and keep watching their progress and send them a cheery email, because the fact that you can see their progress and you can also communicate with them, right, which is going to be important so they don't feel like they're in a vacuum and the parents are not going nuts, right, that there's no teacher support. And then when they come in, try to do your conversations at that point, like use the material that they've been working on at home. So that's what I would do with the little kids, and they're going to do real simple stuff like colors and what have you. I haven't looked through, I did the Owóksape all the way through in a couple days about 2 years ago. So you're going to need to pick out the ones that little kids can do. I don't know. I'd have to look at them and see what exercise types do not include writing if you're really doing like kindergarten or pre-K, because we don't necessarily, and Elliot, this is another good suggestion actually, we don't necessarily have anything built for pre-K. But you might want to think about a set of exercises, or Jan and Marek and whoever's doing them, that don't have writing as part of the recognition, the pattern. It's just going to be pattern recognition with pictures and sounds and what have you. So I think you'll have to pick out your exercises really carefully, Don. It'll be some of those, listen to this and, click the picture ones.
At the end of, before we went into schools closing, going all distant learning, I had all my students doing pretty complex sentences, and then just looking through what's offered on this Owóksape. That option isn't there, so I may have to re-examine how I want to do this.
And I'm
well,
try
email me too, Don, because basically we can kick some ideas around too. My email, so.
We're doing a in-service on Monday for our school on how to use our whiteboards for distant learning. So
okay,
maybe
cool.
I can work something out there. I'll keep you guys updated too on what's going on with that.
Okay.
Yeah, and now that so the other thing about once I flip the switch on your account being a teacher account is you're able to access the entirety of the curriculum without having to progress or anything. So if you explore or have any trouble, just let us know. I guess let us know what does fit with your kids and what doesn't, because it's always good for us to know things like that. So
because as being in the classroom, and Courtney can attest to that for sure, is that you're gonna have some that are more advanced than others, and some that just don't care. And the ones that I focus on would be the ones that don't care, because I want them to care about it.
Right on.
That's gonna be about communicating too if they're at home, right? Just keeping in touch with them really regularly, so they don't feel like they're, nobody at school cares and they call in three months later, right?
There's very few 7 to 12 that are with their parents. They're all with guardians or grandmas, And my thing would be to talk to their parents or guardian or grandma or something, and have them say, sit with them when they're doing the lesson so you can help them. Because you're always talking about there's no one to go home to and practice. Well, parents can sit right there with them and help them if they want. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully parents will get more involved. You've got another last question about sharing lessons across teachers, Elliot, from Maggie.
Sure.
Can you share lessons? Can you see other teachers' lessons? I was telling you that's probably going to come up, right? Trajectories that work well and stuff like that, teachers are going to want to share.
Yeah, and so the current system in place is that teachers can see other lessons created within the same school and copy them. But I have mostly locked down editing. I don't think editing is going to be locked down by anyone but the teacher that created it, but any teacher would be able to copy from within their school. One other thing,
and then they could edit it once they copied it?
Right. Yeah, so they can make their own version and then edit from there. As far as sharing between schools, if that comes up, at this point, just shoot me an email and I'll flip them around for you real quick. If somebody has a lesson that's really perfect for a whole bunch of teachers, I could even include it as a default lesson if something like that comes up, where there's one that's just like, oh man, everybody likes you know, Gloria's lesson or whoever. And, you know, so I'm happy to, you know, add lessons or move them across the board between schools. But for now, just because it seemed like most teachers would be working within the same school, you know, more directly, those lessons are kind of shared and more easily accessible. And then you can have multiple teachers for a classroom. So if there are multiple teachers, all the switches and timing and release stuff that's in the classroom view is editable by either or any teacher that is assigned as a teacher to that classroom. Does that make sense?
I heard edible.
Oh, editable.
Okay, it's lunchtime, you know.
Yeah.
Owóksape.
Good to see you, Don.
Yeah, good to see you guys too. All right, I gotta go, so thanks.
All right. Well, yeah. Thanks everybody for coming, and I think we'll call it there and shut it down. And like I said, I totally appreciate everyone coming out, and definitely hit the feedback button in the top right if you have any trouble, and it'll wake me up in the middle of the night. And,
Is it possible to get a link to the recording or no?
Yes, and I think it will be available on Facebook as well. But I think you'll probably see a post, and if they send me a link, I'll send an email out to all the participants.
Great. Thank you.
But yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Doksha, everybody.
Doksha.